Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We are at the New Jersey Coastal Resilience Collaborative's Winter 2022 Coffee Chat. I think we can safely call it that. I'm Vanessa Tropiano. I'm the Coastal Training Program Coordinator at the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve, and I am helping the NJCRC to launch this coffee chat program through facilitation and meeting planning. For those who are here for the first time, the NJCRC is a network of coastal resilience professionals, and the purpose of this coffee chat program is to better facilitate connections between local communities and stakeholders who have technical assistance needs and the NJCRC members who can assist with those needs. And I just want to make everyone aware that we're recording today's session, and we'll also be recording the breakouts for those who can't be there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Mahaney, NJCRC co-chair, for a little bit of an introduction.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this third version of the coffee chat. And I think we've learned a tremendous amount from your first two participations, and we're looking forward to continuing these coffee chats as a way to interface the communities and the towns and the participants in resiliency and coastal resiliency with the partners that are able in the CRC to provide technical assistance to them. And Tony McDonald, Tim Billingham, and I as co-chairs are very appreciative of Vanessa taking on this task and working with Tom Harrington and Laura Kerr, who are our support staff. These have been very highly participated in during the last two coffee chats, and we're trying to tailor the programs each time to the needs you have and the requests you're making. So with that, I'll turn it back to Vanessa because I want to maximize the amount of time for the discussions.
Thanks, Ed. So we have two fabulous speakers today who will be in two separate breakout rooms. The format will be a short presentation followed by question and answer and discussion. We split the format into two breakout rooms to maximize discussion time with the speakers, which is one of the things that the participants asked for after our first coffee chat back in September. So you'll be able to move between the breakout rooms freely, and I'll explain how to do that in a couple of minutes so you can catch part of each presentation or part of each discussion. But first, I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves and explain their topic just briefly. That way you can decide which room you want to join. So let's start with Megan.
Good morning. Megan Wren from New Jersey Office of Planning Advocacy, and I'll be talking about some municipal resources that are focused primarily on helping municipalities be able to get ready for and achieve the requirements of the February 2021 addition to the municipal land use law requirement for the coastal vulnerability assessment. And I'll throw in a little bit of just background and basics about other resources that the Office of Planning Advocacy has.
Great, thank you, Megan. And now Jason, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm Jason Miller. I'm with the Army Corps of Engineers in our Philadelphia District Office. The Corps of Engineers has technical assistance programs, and so that's most of what I'm going to talk about. And specifically, we have a program called Floodplain Management Services, which can be a 100% federally funded technical assistance. But just like everything in the government, and especially at the Corps, it's confusing and difficult to navigate. And I want to try and explain the best way to do that and help folks to understand a little bit about the programs and how to access those programs. And I'll touch on some of the other core programs available as well. So that should be about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jason. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms in just a minute. When I do, a box will appear on your screen showing the two rooms. One says New Jersey Office of Planning Advocacy, the other says U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and you just click the join button on the room you want to join first. Once you're in the breakout, you can click on the breakout rooms icon in your little Zoom control bar, and that box will come back up and you'll be able to switch between rooms. You can also click leave room, which will bring you back to this main room where I'm just going to be hanging out in case anybody needs assistance moving around. I'm able to move you manually on my end. So if you're having trouble, just stay where you are and I can manually move you after people have dispersed from the room. And my facilitators, just a reminder to start recording as soon as you get into the room. Okay. Alrighty, so now everybody should be getting the breakout rooms message where you can click join and move to the room of your choice.
I hit record. Awesome. All right. So thank you again for suffering through all of that delay. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Jason, for agreeing to speak with everybody today. I think this I am so excited about what you have to tell our group. So I'm going to turn it over to you and not waste another minute.
Okay, thanks. And I just want to mention, I'm flying blind. Like I don't know if there's another way to do stuff in Zoom, but I can only see my slides. So if there's things being posted in the chat or if something's going on that I'm not aware of, just jump in, somebody interrupt me. I don't mind.
For sure. I'll watch the chat. And if anybody
Okay.
has questions they want to put in the chat, they can. Or there'll definitely is time at the end for questions as well.
Yeah, and I was going to say, once I'm done with the presentation, I'll kind of get out of this crazy view and monitor the chat and go from there. But so yes, so thank you again to the New Jersey CRC for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about Corps of Engineers programs. As I said in the intro, they are confusing, and I've been with the Corps for 23 years now. I've been working in our floodplain management services program that entire time. I'm just going to call it FPMS from now on. And I don't know everything about it. It's just the way it is. It's government stuff. Can't really help that. So the best thing that you can probably take out of this presentation is hopefully a little bit of information, but contacts, so you'll know who to reach out to if you have questions. The expectation isn't that you all are going to know exactly what program fits or what you're asking for. It's more about just, hey, here's your contacts, start a dialogue, and we go from there. And I did want to mention up front a few things. And a common misconception is that the Corps of Engineers is a grant agency, and we aren't. We actually don't grant any funding anywhere that I'm aware of. So that's just get that out of the way first of all. So any money that we might be talking about from the federal side is being used by the Corps of Engineers or is being contracted for services. It's not being given and granted to local municipalities or non-federal entities for anything. We're going to focus on our technical assistance programs because that's what this group is all about, from what I understand. But our technical assistance programs are have some caveats to them, and we'll talk about those. One of which is if we intend to construct something. I say we, so our partners, if our partners and the Corps intend to implement something or build something, those can't happen through technical assistance, but we do have other programs that those can happen through, and those are generally larger cost shed studies. So just wanted to get some of those things out of the way up front as we start to work our way through. Oh shoot. Okay. So I am going to focus on the technical assistance programs, and this slide was kind of just my way of the Corps has. I don't know what people know of or think they know of the Corps, but some of the things we do, I would say, are very big projects, and those usually fall under our general investigations. And so generally you can think of the different programs as scale and complexity. So as we go from very small to small and then big and very big, they generally tend to be increasing not only in scale and scope, but also complexity. And these two, the civil works programs, as I call them here, Where we're talking about big or very big, those are where we're actually constructing things, or we're able to construct things. Our technical assistance programs, we're not able to do that. And so to give you a really rough idea, like when I say very small, I'm talking about 25,000, 50,000, maybe up to 100 as we get into this, what we would say is small, maybe up to $200,000 of federal investment. Our continuing authorities program caps out at about $15 million per project, and our general investigations program doesn't really have a limit. Those studies themselves can be 3 million, even more than that, just to get through studies, with no real limit on what could be spent on implementation or construction. So so that's kind of what I would say is the scale. And I do want to focus today on floodplain management services, but I do have to mention the other ones, because not one size doesn't fit all, one program doesn't fit all. So I just want to give you a little bit of compare and contrast. I won't spend a lot of times on the other programs, but I do start with our planning assistance to states program here. And I wanted to mention that because each of these programs, they do have some limitations on what we can look at. Planning assistance, we say we can do just about anything that relates to water. So it can be flooding, which is a common need, but it also can include water quantity, water quality, so water supply, different assessments, things like that. So that can fall under planning assistance to the states. Planning assistance to the states does have a cost share, though, and there is, I try to highlight some of the important things like that, so that they kind of stand out. And the planning assistance cost share is, for every dollar spent on the federal side, there's a corresponding dollar spent by our non-federal partner. So it's a 50-50 cost share program, and it is a technical assistance program. So we are not leading to construction or implementation. We can go to what we call conceptual types of designs, but and the other thing I wanted to mention here is, if we are doing what we consider a comprehensive plan, 100% of that 50% non-federal cost share can be in-kind services. All right, let's go to the next. So for contact information, I am the planning assistance program manager. It's best to reach out to me. I list any on each of these contact slides. I'm just listing recent or current projects in the state that we may be able to provide some more information on. I do actually have some of my colleagues have joined me in the room that will hopefully be able to answer some of our questions about some of the ongoing efforts in some of these studies, if there is any interest. So, but I won't spend time on that right now. Okay, so FPMS is a technical assistance program as well. Now this has to be flooding related. So there is limits on what we can look at in this program, but as the name implies, it's anything to do with flooding. I list a bunch of projects. This is the program I've been working on for my entire career at the Corps, so almost 23 years. You'll see a lot of, as I mentioned with our tech assistance, we're not going to implementation, so you'll see a lot of mapping products coming out of it, a lot of outreach and education and communication, flood risk assessments and vulnerability assessments for communities. We put together flood warning systems at times. We can do things even that have to do with the hazard mitigation plan. So we review state hazard mitigation plans and provide input. We could do some of the same for any local hazard mitigation plans. And just about anything that has to do with flooding that doesn't have to do with building anything, we can pretty much do. Lots of flood inundation mapping work, which is I'm going to show a little bit more on for an example. But this one could be completely federally funded, and I say could be because most of the time that's the way it goes. But if there are limitations on the funding, and a big part of the reason why we decided to have this talk today is we expect through the current administration that we're going to be getting a lot more money being pushed into the FPMS program. So there may be some opportunities that we hope we'll be able to bring to our partners. But if for some reason we don't have enough funding, because it is a competitive program, I'll touch on that in a little bit, but we can accept voluntary contributions from our partners to increase the amount of funding that we have to work on things. So let's see. I want to also mention Silver Jackets, which falls under our FPMS program, and that's really just a group that meets probably similar to this. It's state-led, and what we do is we bring together our state partners that work in flooding, federal partners that work in flooding. We have some local folks that participate at times as well, counties usually, sometimes municipalities. And really what it is it's kind of a coordination and collaboration body. And the idea of the program is to make sure that as much as we can, our core programs are being guided towards state priorities in flooding. So we try to have, and we like to not duplicate information and leverage our partners' data. So it's a good place to just have discussions about what each agency is doing, how we can leverage data being collected or modeling being developed at our partner agencies if possible. And we can also come up with potential FPMS types of projects. And here's kind of a list of, and I'm the program manager again. Here's a list of recent ones, I guess, in New Jersey. We've done a lot in New Jersey, quite frankly, and that's because our Silver Jackets team has been pretty active. I also want to mention that through our FPMS program, we do technical support at times to FEMA. We do less of it in New Jersey with FEMA Region 2 than we do in Pennsylvania with FEMA Region 3, but we can act as a technical contractor for FEMA and do revisions to flood insurance study, modeling and mapping. And that's why it falls under FPMS, because it's modeling and mapping efforts to support the National Flood Insurance Program. So I thought it would be useful to kind of talk a little bit about an example from New Jersey of an FPMS project, and mainly because I wanted to illustrate some of the things over here, which are all the partners that are involved. And so FPMS is at its best when we're taking existing information, we're leveraging data, leveraging modeling, which allows us to reduce additional investment by pulling together these partners and pulling together pieces of information and then turn it into a product. And so that's why I have my little note to myself down here. If I forget to say it, FPMS is great for filling in gaps. So it really works well and it kind of gets back to the very small dollar amount. If we're talking about $50,000 or $70,000 of federal investment in the FPMS program, doesn't get you a lot, but it does if you're able to leverage and establish partnerships to make a project sort of complete by pulling together all these pieces. So one of the priorities in the state when we started meeting as a Silver Jackets team was to get as much inundation mapping done in the state as we could. And you can see, in addition to doing the Delaware River, we worked on a bunch of these here. The Corps didn't do all of them, but we did a bunch. And the advantage there was FEMA and New Jersey DEP had been partnering on collecting data like digital topography and developing hydraulic models to update FEMA flood insurance studies. And that allowed us to have existing modeling and existing data that we could use. And how we used it was, well, we wanted to develop these inundation map libraries, and the National Weather Service hosts those on their AHAPS website, Advanced Hydrologic Prediction Service website. And then we also were able to include local county emergency managers usually, because they would review those, and the Weather Service, as we're developing these map libraries, would also take the opportunity to look at impact statements and things like that. So it would just kind of bring together a good team. And what the Corps would do is we might have to tweak those models a little bit for our own purposes, but basically take the hydraulic models from FEMA and the DEP and turn them into inundation map libraries, which are essentially like 1 foot incremental levels of flooding. I'll show you kind of a quick example of those on the next. And so the crazy looking, my supervisor called this the color frog. This was just the one project in particular we worked on was to develop modeling in the Passaic area. And so we actually did something like 60 total miles of continuous mapping. It was partnered with both Corps of Engineers districts. So the New York district did the hydraulic model work by taking the existing models and tweaking them. And then my office in Philadelphia developed the maps. And this is what typical maps look like as they're hosted on the Weather Service. You get those blue inundation areas. You can click on points to get ranges of flooding. And it's all based on forecasts at a river gauge. So as the National Weather Service is forecasting a high water event at a particular gauge, then you can bring up that inundation map and see what the extents are. I know this is a coastal group. We don't have a lot of this type of work on the coast, but I know there's some efforts underway to try and do similar work along the coast, just so you know. So I think that's enough said on that. Okay, so to kind of summarize a little bit about those 2 technical assistance programs and just point out again what some of the differences are and then what some of the similarities are. And I haven't really touched on a lot of this yet, but I did under PAS mention it's all things water and it's 50-50 cost shared. That part or all of that 50% non-fed can be in-kind services depending on the type of planning effort we're doing. PAS has actually been really fully funded for a few years, and a lot of times there's money left on the table at the federal side, so we're not typically using all the money that gets put into that program. The limit is actually $5 million per state per fiscal year, and that we don't get very close to that ever, as far as I know. And I think part of that is, it comes with a cost share, and so that's not always easy to take on at a non-federal entity. I would say typically those studies are about $200,000 or less on the federal side, but they can be, much more than that, or they could be much smaller than that. There's really, other than that $5 million limit, there really isn't much limiting us on that any other way. And then FPMS, all things flood, there's not a requirement for cost sharing, but we can accept dollars from our non-federal partners. And those are, I say the program caps our studies at $150,000. I'd say most of the time we're doing $50,000 or less. If I didn't say it before, I do want to say again that on FPMS, you're strictly partnering with the Corps to use our technical expertise. So that's what technical assistance means in the Corps of Engineers speak. You are partnering with us to do work for you. And that's more true in FPMS than anywhere else. I think in planning assistance, we may be able to do some contracts with, as needed, but things like contracting are really frowned upon and are not typical in FPMS. It is nationally competitive, and we've been exhausting those funds pretty consistently for, I'd say, the last 5 to 7 years. So it can be difficult to get that money. So we may have to wait if there's a request, or we may have to have phased scopes where we have multi-year efforts to do pieces, sensible pieces at a time to get to where we need to be. But again, we do expect there's going to be some additional funding being pumped into that program. So there may be some opportunities, and that's part of why we're talking today. Both of them are about a year to 2 years execution period. We do focus on execution in these programs. And it really, believe it or not, all it takes is either a letter or an email to get started. And really, as I mentioned up front, the best thing to do is contact me, since I manage both of those programs, and we can figure out what makes the most sense. And if we get to the point where we start talking about an actual request, we'll work together to come up with a scope, cost, and schedule. And then I'll try to find the dollars. Oops, I messed up. I'll try to find the federal dollars. And then I forget what that says. Conceptual plans only. Okay, so I had to add this in, reality check time. So sometimes that sounds super great and sounds super free, but we actually had a national FPMS program call yesterday, and they said, I think the exact line they said was, please don't go talking to your potential partners tomorrow. And I'm like, wait a minute, this was yesterday, and I am literally going to be speaking to potential partners tomorrow. So it's almost like they were talking to me. But what they said was, we do expect this money coming in, but we do expect there's going to be some additional guidelines for implementation of the funding. So we don't know what that's going to look like yet. I think we do know with pretty clear certainty that under FPMS, we are not going to be doing contract support. So there has to be kind of a dose of reality, which is we have to have core labor available to do whatever requests are coming in. And if for instance, the Corps of Engineers in Philly is burdened and doesn't have capability and availability, we'll talk to some of our neighboring districts. But we have to exhaust all Corps of Engineers possibilities before we even talk about contracting anything. And again, I'm only saying this because we expect there to be more money than ever before in this program. So there's a good thing happening, but it's gonna come with some additional hoops. And there's also going to be a focus on economically disadvantaged communities. So the idea being that there is this potential for additional 100% federal technical assistance. They would like to see it directed towards those communities that have difficulty providing that assistance on their own or getting that assistance on their own. So we're still kind of waiting to see what that's all going to look like. But I just wanted to mention, since it was so specifically mentioned yesterday on our call, I just wanted to make sure I got that in there. So I thought, as I'm trying to wrap up here, and I don't know, hopefully I didn't go too long, but I did want to kind of think like through this, if I were you, or if I were someone at a municipality, you know, how would I know what program to even talk about? And again, really the easiest thing is to call me or email me and let's just get a discussion going. But this, I'm not going to read each of these, but kind of what's important, if anything, here is that, again, it's kind of like scale and complexity is really the difference between FPMS and PAS. And then as you get down further, you may realize, well, you know, we're even to a scale and complexity that rises above PAS, and we really do want to start looking at other programs, because we do think we may want to implement something. And so if we start in FPMS, we can always transition to PAS, or if we start in PAS and we want to transition to another program, that's also possible. So I just wanted to mention those things. And hopefully while I was blabbering, you guys could kind of read my little scenarios that I put there. So just real quick, touching on some of those programs. The Continuing Authorities Program, CAP, as we call it, is a civil works program, can go to construction. And I mentioned those funding limits before. I'm not going to say it again, but the point of continuing authorities is we don't actually have to seek authority from Congress to do these projects, as long as they fit within any of the however many 9, I think, programs that have been established. That authority already exists, and we can, using our own judgment at the Corps, proceed through the process, which means going through like a federal interest determination, making sure we think there's a need for additional investment, going through a limited feasibility study, and then getting into plans and specs and potential construction. And the contact person is Jane Jablonski at our office. I imagine we'll be sending, I realize now as I'm going quickly that you may not have time to copy some of these, but we'll make sure that I guess this is being recorded, and we'll also send out the slides so that you have everybody's contact information at the Corps. And then, as I mentioned, civil works are bigger. Those actually require congressional authority to study it. And then it would also require congressional authority to implement it, and probably some other stuff that I'm missing. Those are big projects. Those are long projects. We try to make them 3 years and $3 million for the study portion of it. That doesn't always happen. So there are waivers to that. And one of the most relevant ones would be our New Jersey Back Bay Coastal Resilience Study that's ongoing now. And then, the projects that were constructed as part of previous general investigations and are continuing to be maintained and operated are the shore protection projects on the Atlantic coast. So folks are probably well aware of those studies and projects, I would think. And our project development chief back at the office is the person that you would want to contact, at least to get started on that process, if need be. So then I just have a couple of resources, which again, I can send out or we can include with the slides, just documents that I think are helpful. This covers all of the Corps programs, including the technical assistance that I talked about, has some of the guidelines and some of the stuff that you need to be aware of with each of the programs. And then we have a placemat on our technical assistance programs. These are posted on the Baltimore's Corps of Engineers website, which I have at the bottom there. It just has kind of everything we went over kind of at the ready. It's 2 pages, actually. I just put the first page here so you can see it. The second page has some additional example projects that were done under FPMS and PAS around the country. So it sometimes helps to have that context for things. Okay, so that is what I wanted to talk about. Let me go back to where you guys are here and figure out how not to. Okay, wait, I don't want to share. I'm not sharing anything anymore, Laura.
You are
okay.
not.
All right, good.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, I think I went long. I'm sorry about that. And hopefully I didn't ramble too much, but.
Well, let's see. So we are definitely would like you to encourage you all to unmute yourself, put your camera on if you would like. The goal is really to have a conversation with Jason and have some of your questions answered about this program. If it helps, if you want to raise your hand, I can call on you if it makes it feel more organized. And if anybody wants to get started.
And I do see in the chat that Joel, my colleague Joel Dome, posted something about PAS, and so Joel's a resource. I'm grateful for him being here today. So thank you, Joel. And I know Scott Sanderson, who is our coastal planning chief, is here as well. I don't know that I see any other Corps folks. So we have a couple other folks here that are resources for you as you start thinking of questions.
Joel, I'm not sure if you reposted that chat or if that was from earlier, but you might want to post it one more time just in case other people can't.
Oh,
see
he
it.
sent it to me. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's
okay.
that's my bad. So Joel gave me an idea
Never
that I should mention. Yeah.
I see Paul did. He's unmuted. If you want to get it rolling, Paul.
Yeah, hi, Jason. How you doing? I'm a municipal engineer down in Upper Township in Cape May County, and been having some discussions with the DEP on some different issues, and was wondering if this might be something that, all of our firm maps are done based on tidal, transects, and it's all modeled that way. However, we do have some, I'll say, rivers and creeks that, we've been discussing. There were no mapped floodways as part of the firms, but, some of them may or may not want to be considered floodways. And I just was wondering, if that's something that you guys have tackled in the past, where there is that, overlap mainly in the tidal areas, but we still have some creeks and, like we have the Cedar Swamp Creek and the Tuckahoe River area that, might not hurt to maybe look to see if it does could be modeled as a riverine system also to see if there is some floodway implications. Is that something that you guys might be able to look at?
Yeah, I would say yes. So now the one thing I'll caveat it with is most of the time when we're doing work that we expect to end up as a FEMA mapping update, we would want FEMA to pay for it, for lack of a better way to put it. But if we're not sure and it's just kind of, hey, let's do some modeling, let's do some limited mapping just to kind of get an idea of what's happening, we probably can do it. Yeah. And what we might do in that case is, if we decide, hey, this really could be something, we would be turning that over to the municipality to say, hey, you might want to talk to FEMA about getting this updated. You guys might be the applicant for a LOMAR or for a PMR, like a limited map update revision type thing. So it could go that route too.
Okay.
Or at that point, we might be able to get FEMA involved and see if they could, support a full-blown remap or restudy or whatever it might be. So short answer, yes, it could go multiple ways, which we've done in the past. So,
okay.
Yeah, so I would just say, shoot me an email and we can have a conversation about it. You can, and
Sure,
so it makes sense, and yeah, go from there.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. I see Matt.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Do you happen to know, Jason, with the different programs that you mentioned, a lot of this stuff when it involves dredging, if there's opportunities to do like shoreline restoration or any type of rehab project that would mitigate flooding using dredge spoils, would that be considered? And do you know if there's any limitations if federal land were to be involved? Because I know my research so far has been a lot of like the grants and stuff that's out there. Usually there's some limitations as to what can be done on federal lands. Do you know if, like with any of these programs, if you're limited in that capacity?
So I won't be able to answer that from the dredged material sort of aspect. It looks like Scott's chiming in. I was kind of hoping. Yeah. Okay. So Scott Sanderson posted his phone number on the chat. So I don't know if you see that. Scott is probably the best person to answer things. I see he's coming on video, so maybe he's going to chime in for us here. And I'll let Scott talk, and then I'll come back to the FPMS perspective.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I just figured I would throw my info in the chat. I'm Scott Sanderson. I work in coastal planning at the Corps in Philadelphia, and specifically the dredge material question. We did actually complete a study, gosh, almost 2 years ago now, on beneficial use of dredge material. It was focused on the Delaware River watershed, but I think the question you're getting at with the usage of federal land, is that related? Are you thinking in the context of like damage reduction for structures, or more like an ecosystem restoration, or a combination of the two?
Yeah, it would be a combination of the two.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'd have to check with, we have real estate folks that work on our teams that can kind of advise us on the rules based on the type of land ownership where plans are being implemented. But definitely happy to run that by someone with a little more background on the real estate rules than myself. But thinking of the dual purpose part of the question, I think that's an important question too, because sometimes in the way our congressional authorities are written, depending on the type of study, they can be hyper focused on one purpose when Congress gives us the authority to do the work. And so definitely a good point and question at, like at the beginning, say it's a feasibility analysis, to look at the wiggle room in that authority to make it a dual purpose effort, if that makes sense.
Is it okay, Scott? I'll reach out to you after the meeting and I'll tell you what what we're trying to accomplish and see if it may work or not.
Yeah, actually, if tomorrow is possible, would be better. I'm in meetings the rest of the day, but yeah, absolutely.
Great. I'll give you a call tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks.
Would you mind if I followed up on that on that question, on Matt's question, Jason and Scott?
Of course, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Marty McHugh. I'm with Sumco Eco Contracting, and we're working on a lot of navigation dredging projects, and I'm just wondering, is there an effort underway either in the Delaware? It sounds like probably there was, right, or on the coast, to look at these navigation dredging projects and kind of match them up with resilience projects that are being planned or being identified. I know there's different organizations working at this, but it'd be great to understand that a little bit better if there is some effort on that.
Yeah, sure. So there's definitely ongoing efforts in varying degrees. It kind of depends on the scope and context of the federal navigation project, whether it's deep draft or whatnot. But bottom line is that there's certain deep draft navigation projects within the Delaware River watershed tributaries that they're already looking at opportunities to do beneficial reuse. Like I believe it's the Salem River. There's material being deposited in an adjacent community at Oakwood Beach as part of a reuse, a beneficial reuse resilience approach to managing that sediment. So, but that is something that I think the Corps is wrestling with, how to, from a policy standpoint, to utilize navigation and resiliency initiatives collectively, because I won't go too into the weeds, but one of the challenges we have is how our different projects are funded. And so navigation projects have always been funded out of operation and maintenance business line. And then, projects that are typically for restoration, ecosystem restoration, or shore protection come out of a different funding stream. So at the end of the day, one of the biggest challenges is creating consistency and timing of those funding streams, honestly, so that the navigation project can be funded consistent with the needs of the resilience effort. Does that answer the question? It is a little bit bureaucratic, I know, but it's kind of one of the challenges we wrestle with in implementing those ideas.
No, I know. I'm curious though, also, is this Philadelphia district? I saw on the map that Jason presented that some of those projects are up in North Jersey. I guess there's some collaboration between Philly and the New York district on those kinds of projects. Is that the same for these navigation dredging projects as well, for beneficial use?
Yes, definitely. And our operations group, could talk details more on that, because when it gets to the navigation and the management portion of those projects, that's where it moves out of like our shop into the operations shop. But to answer your question, yes, that there is collaboration across districts, especially when the watershed crosses districts.
Okay. Thanks for your answer. Thanks for this. It's very helpful. The whole presentation. Thank you, Jason, too.
You're welcome. And thank you, Scott, for helping.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands raised. Does anybody have any questions? Just want to point out, when I first talked to Jason about this program, and Scott brought it to us as a potential topic, we're thinking about that our coastal communities are in so many different various stages of where they are in their coastal resilience planning. And one of the biggest hurdles can be how to get money for their resilience projects. And our last coffee chat, we really talked with 3 different communities that all said you have to get these little pots going, get all these little pieces, start putting together so that you can build a grant application to get bigger money. And I think everything that the floodplain management system or floodplain management program provides are those little pots of money for getting people started. And I love the simplicity of just having to send Jason an email or make a phone call and say, how do I get started in getting a vulnerability assessment done or identify sources of where the flooding is happening. So I would really like to encourage any communities. I'm not exactly sure which communities we have in our group today, but if anybody has any questions, or would Jason, you want to build on that?
Yeah, so I will a little bit. I wanted to at least mention and possibly offer that, if it's easier to just have a conversation offline with me, that's completely fine. And I've also made similar presentations to township supervisors or, whatever it might be. If we need to get to some other folks to help us figure out, whether there's a need and we can fill a void, I'm willing to spend some time doing those things. So, if it's having another conversation or having another presentation in a different form, whatever it might be, I'm always open to things. Might be busy at times, but it doesn't last forever. So I can fit it in eventually and probably, in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, and Jason, if I could just piggyback on what you're saying, just kind of my take, I really like the FPMS and PAS programs. I know as you summarized, they don't have construction with them, but in my mind, they're really flexible from a technical variability tool, on what you can do with them, and just when you're doing long-term resilience type of planning, they're just, in my mind, there's opportunities in them to kind of tools in the tool belt to maybe add something to help your long-term, whether it's planning or even capital investment strategies that support that planning. It might be just something that could add to a level of clarity that helps you plan that out. So just that's where my thinking is with these types of programs. So.
And I understand after your conversation yesterday or your national meeting yesterday, where you might be a little more hesitant to pump up how much money might be available and what you're able to do. But we all know that there's a lot more money coming to coastal resilience. So I understand your hesitancy, but I think I would like to encourage our coastal communities to, try to get the money. Somebody's got to get the money. Why shouldn't it be us?
Right. Yeah. And I wanted to do it in such a way that I didn't want to tamp down any expectations, but I did want to, some things are always going to be beyond my control. I'm pretty good at getting a hold of those federal dollars when asked for, but it just can't guarantee anything. And I did put my email in the chat just in case folks weren't able to get it off the slides easily as I was racing there towards the end. So. Okay.
I think we are coming to the end. I know there was a message popped up that I missed, but if anybody has any last questions or if there's any last things that Jason or Scott want to add. The other thing, I can think of another one of the important pieces I thought you had mentioned, projects through the FPMS can be short. They don't have to be, they can be done in a few months. They're not necessarily these big projects that have to meet certain markers, like many core projects.
Yeah, there are times where I might be able to get money as quickly as.
Let's see. All right, it worked. Okay, so I think we can get started. Megan, you should be able to share your screen.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you go into view mode, Megan? Here you go. You got it.
Okay, that was my 1 minute promo for the session. So hello again, Megan Wren from the State Planning Office.
I think we just lost your.
I can't hear you.
Okay, we just lost your audio, Megan.
We can't hear you. What happened?
Okay, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
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 Okay, better. How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so it looks like we can have sight and sound. Okay.
We lost your PowerPoint.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh. Why would that be?
Try sharing again.
That's good.
Okay. It still looks okay.
There you go. It's starting. You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can progress it because it's okay. Are you seeing the full screen or are you seeing my whole? Okay.
We're seeing the full screen.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So is it progressing now?
No.
No.
Would you like me to share your slides for you?
Maybe so. Is it? How about now?
Now
that
it
progress-
is.
Now
Okay.
it is.
now-
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Okay. So the Office of Planning Advocacy, and you may recognize the document on the left-hand corner where the state plan, we're still with it. And that's kind of the focus of all that we do. And the goals from the state plan are still relevant, though we all hope we'll have a chance to take a crack at them again here sometime soon. And the things that are changed now in our focus, in addition to the 8 goals, is that resiliency and equity are being infused into everything we do. So I did want to highlight, before jumping into the resilience guidance, that's the primary focus of what I'm going to share today. I wanted to just share, in case you didn't know it was there, that on our website there is an interactive state plan map that's been, updated through all the years. And so if you ever need to double check on centers and cores and nodes or planning areas as they stand today based on endorsements that have happened over the years, you can go onto the website under mapping and highlight the interactive state plan online map. And some of the layers, and that's not even a complete list, are over here. You can look at parcels, you can look at flood layers, you can look at, it's not as refined a tool, for instance, as Flood Mapper for looking at floods, but you can look at the state as a whole or zoom in on your community. So it is a tool that's there that I know I use pretty frequently. And if you didn't know it was there it is. And so in Jersey, Office of Planning Advocacy is very much trying to be a support organization for municipalities as they navigate their planning world. And the Municipal Climate Resilience Planning Guide was an attempt to create sort of like a cheat sheet that would help municipalities kind of pull together all of the multitude of resources out there to figure out how to approach the new law that has recently come into effect. And I'll just be showing different aspects of this document that's available on our website that pulls these things together with links to the different resources. And you probably have heard about the bill that passed in February last year, just about a year now, that requires that municipalities add a climate vulnerability assessment into their master plan anytime they do a land use element or a revised master plan. And it's actually, it's in a lot of ways, I mean, it's easy to kind of, I think, for municipalities to move forward and kind of pick and choose things here and there that they focus on without thinking about the very real issues related to climate change. And so the specificity of the law is listed here, and it's taken straight from the regulations. And the municipality needs to analyze the current and future threats and vulnerabilities associated with climate-related natural hazards. It's listed earlier the actual hazards that have to be considered. And it also includes a build-out analysis, looking at the threats and vulnerabilities related to the future build-out based on the current zoning. So it's also required to identify critical facilities, utilities, roadways, and other infrastructure for evacuation and for sustaining quality of life. Also, to analyze the potential impact of natural hazards on all other elements of the master plan. And it goes not just in looking at the resiliency and vulnerabilities, but also providing a strategy and design standards that would help to implement the reduction of risks associated with those hazards, including a policy statement, consistency coordination, and integration of the climate change related assessment into the other plans that the municipality has. And it does require that the municipality focuses on the best available science provided by DEP. And so this document, like I said, it's meant to be sort of a cheat sheet where you can, if you need to at a glance, see what the law requires, see where the places are that you can go to get support. So there's links to all of the different, well, I say all, to many, there's so many resources out there. And I should have started by saying that this is meant to be a living document, and it was published in November last year, and it's actually in the process of being re-upped because there have been so many changes since November that there are additional links and resources that will be added. So it does send you to some of the places that have incredible resources at, for municipalities, and has links to the DEP, Resilient New Jersey, the toolkit, and all of the different, places that are that provide so much guidance. But it's meant to be sort of almost like the place to start to kind of get your head around what things are out there, not for the folks who are doing this every day, but more for the folks that are just a little overwhelmed by how many different places there are to find things. And it does highlight that the technical assistance is actually written into the law, and says that DEP will provide that as practical, as practicable. And so the document has the definition of resiliency and the kind of the basic case for why a vulnerability assessment is a useful document, and it condenses the process into the basic steps of the vulnerability assessment, and with each one links you to the resources to be able to do that step. So again, it's really it's not meant to be the be all end all, just sort of an entry point for municipalities that don't know where to start. And so there are a lot of different tools out there, and this has a link at the places where you would need them to the different steps of the assessment. And it does have some information about the resilient strategy and what some of the best practices are. And of course, a pitch for center-based development and smart growth, and additional options with lots of different ways for communities to what their resilient strategy should really include. And there's a growing resource page, and this will likely be in smaller print the next go round because there are a lot more things have happened since then, and since November with and since a year ago is when it was the law first came out. There are at least a few that we know of municipalities that have, at least in draft form, their vulnerability assessment already developed. And I know Rutgers has worked really hard with a number of communities and provided technical assistance to make the gold standard for what one of these reports can look like. And so links to those as a standard will be upcoming in the next version. And we have a synergy with a Sustainable Jersey with OPA, where the municipalities that are going through plan endorsement can achieve certifications with points for the actions that they achieve related to the requirements of plan endorsement. And there's also a vulnerability, there's an action for this. So you can actually get points through Sustainable Jersey by doing a coastal vulnerability assessment. So those are some of the links that will be forthcoming in the next. And I'm sure you probably all saw the 2022 Sea Level Rise technical report that's just come out from NOAA. That'll be another link that would be included. And so if you have, and a lot of you are resource, content providers, if there are links that you see that we don't have that we ought to on this document, please feel free to send them along, as it is, like I said, a living document. Matt Blake in our office has been the spearheader for pulling this together. And there have been a lot of, the whole office and a lot of partners have weighed in, and it's not letting me progress anymore. Okay, there we go. Implementing, and of course I'll have to make a pitch for the plan endorsement process. And through plan endorsement, the Office of Planning Advocacy is encouraging, and it's actually a requirement of communities that go through plan endorsement to do this vulnerability assessment sooner than later, instead of waiting until the next time they re-up their master plan or do a land use element. It's in the next year or two that they'll be required to do their vulnerability assessment, because it's really the foundation for so many other actions. And for a community to really build resiliency, they have to first look at their vulnerability. And many communities already have, in some ways. They've done getting to resilience. They've, they're living with flooding on a daily basis. So they're looking at things from a, how do I fix this perspective every day? But they might not be looking at the whole big picture. So this is, and they might have all the tools. They might just not be pulled into one document, and they may not have articulated a strategy. So this is, the plan endorsement, I think, is a process to help kind of help them pull back from the day to day and look at it from a more comprehensive perspective, and to end with a plan and implementation agreement where they've made a commitment to what their next steps will be, and they have the agencies at the table with them to provide technical assistance and help them to achieve those actions that are part of the plan, PIA, the plan implementation agreement. So it's kind of a win-win. That's the way we hope to make it work for folks. And so the reference guide is on our website. It's actually right now, we're in the process of redesigning the website, but right now it's on the homepage right there under our reference materials. And as is the plan endorsement information. And if you have interest in working with a community that is considering plan endorsement, there's our whole office, and shows you which county is under which planner. And we're always happy to talk to community about moving through the process with us. And if you see ways that we can be additionally supportive to communities and provide additional resources, please feel free to let me or someone else at the office know. And I know that we're supposed to leave a lot of time for questions for the session here, so I'll wrap up my words and happy to answer any questions or be part of a dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. That was great, and it's right on time. So we do have plenty of times for questions, and happy to open it up to anybody who would want to come off mute and ask your questions, or you may also put your questions in the chat and I could ask them for you. Either way works for me. I will, Megan, I'll just put in the chat the coastal.
Tom, you've gone on to mute.
Sorry, was I muted the whole time? No, I hope.
No, just the last moment.
Okay, I was just gonna put in the chat that the partners of the collaborative have also created a technical resource directory of services they can offer. So the link's in the chat if anybody wants to look there. Just another resource to connect you with people that are working here in the field.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Megan?
Hi, I have a question. I'm Karen Argenti. I'm with Save Barnegat Bay. And we've watched a couple of our towns go in to get the plan endorsement, and they basically use it as a way of using up more impervious land. And so I'm hopeful that this new change will put us to the point where the plan endorsement and the PIA is actually enforced and looked at. Do you have any comments on that? I mean,
well, I guess I'm not familiar with what communities that had that impact. That seems the opposite of the intent of the program. And the I know there was a period of time where the office was, I don't know what the right word is, well, stalled or gutted, I guess, are words you could use.
Right.
And we're back. So I know that the planners are all working with their communities, and I think there was a time when things like biennial reports and continued progress on the plan implementation agreement was not necessarily top of mind, and there wasn't anyone really here to communicate with the municipalities. So that potentially maybe that's what you're thinking about.
and also there was this problem that we had with public participation. So they claimed that a couple of the towns claimed that they were okay with the public participation as long as it was at the planning board meeting. And so there was no actual meeting of the public where they could participate and comment on it, which it seems like that's part of the process. And
absolutely
would help you get what we're all trying to do. But at this point, I mean, unless that's changed, it was, just completely approved without any public participation. So like a town that I live in is now going into it, and they first put the Citizens Advisory Committee together, but I don't know what else they're going to do.
Well, public participation is absolutely part of the process for plan endorsement. It's one of the items that has to happen in the process. And there's an advisory committee put together to review the municipal self-assessment report, which is the first step that the municipality undertakes. So it's basically a compilation of the planning activities and documents and ordinances, the first step for the agencies and the municipality to kind of take stock of what they have or don't have as related to, to their planning. And so when they put that together, the advisory committee is intended to kind of review it, talk about it, make sure things are all included there. And the next step, the opportunities and constraints, is where the agencies take a look at what's been submitted by the municipality and bring back any additional information that they've collected over the years. And I should say there's a lot of the communities have already been through this once before, and this is a re-endorsement process where they're kind of refreshing what they've done in the past, but there are also communities who are coming at it for the first time. So if they're coming at it where they've done it once before, then you're looking at what's developed over the past 10 years or the past 15 years, and okay, this is what's changed. This is maybe the status and trends. This is maybe natural resources that weren't highlighted in the past, and the biggest thing that's being looked at now is resiliency. So looking at in the first endorsement process, there were areas of flood vulnerability that were included in centers, and this go around they're being removed, or there's a critical environmental site identified where that is, so that it's almost like an overlay for the flood zone. So there's a lot of changes in the actual parameters of the centers, and some planning area changes based on what's changed between now and in the past, or just what's on the ground today. So there's a big re-looking at things this time, and it's baked right into the process to have public participation.
So at what point does the public participate? I just don't understand. Is the community advisory committees open, those committee meetings open to the public?
Yes, they're meant to be. And the next big step, and I went to, there should be a hearing for the municipal self-assessment, and the next is the visionings. So there's actually a process of visioning, and that's intended to happen after the opportunities and constraints report has come together, so that the public has an opportunity to respond and hear about what has been presented in the opportunities and constraints reports. And the visioning is intended to incorporate that information and to incorporate the resiliency and equity issues that weren't necessarily on the table in the earlier efforts in plan endorsement. So the visioning is meant to be the primary place where public participation is really incorporated into the process.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I see Nick Tufaro has his hand up. Nick?
Can you folks hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Megan, just how many municipalities have plan endorsement?
How many are endorsed right now, or how many are in the process? Well, I'll start with, there were 94 communities that were all basically coming up on an expiration date that was no matter when they had gotten into the process through various extensions, they were all coming up to a deadline just before COVID, and there was an extension related to the state of emergency that's still in effect right now that will expire when the state of emergency expires. So those 94 communities, some who have already gone through the process, and a few have already been endorsed, but there are a lot who are coming up to expiration in the very near future. There are also additional communities who were endorsed less than 10 years ago who are still endorsed. So you can, if you ever want to check on the status of a community, you can go onto our website, and under plan endorsement, there's a list of current petitions. That's all the communities who are going through the process right now. and below that is the endorsed communities, so that you can see who's still endorsed, when they're going to expire, and it's a 10-year endorsement. So so you can, I'm sorry if that's not as specific an answer as you were looking for, but
No, that's fine. And my follow-up question is, how does the office feel about that? I mean, we have 560 plus municipalities in New Jersey, and 94 are trying to go for plan endorsement. Locally here in Middlesex County, I don't think we have 2 municipalities that are plan endorsed. And basically they're telling us it's not worth it. One of our most active towns is Plainsboro, and they really have a town center. And one of the obvious reasons for plan endorsement is to get the town centers endorsed. And they didn't feel it was even worth going for. So I think what I'm trying to say is, but I'm now a CFM, certified floodplain manager, and I am really excited to hear how much resiliency and sustainability issues are now being brought to the fore for plan endorsement. But I really think it should be just more generally required or encouraged, without quite honestly, the extreme documentation that has to occur in order for plan endorsement. And then even though it's a good 10 years, in 10 years you have to do it again, which is understandable. But the municipalities just simply don't have the capacity. It seems that's what we're getting on this issue. And so and a third thing I would do then is suggest you start dialogue with the counties more. I know that relationship between the state and OPA and the counties and the municipalities has often been in flux, but we can very actively be your sponsors locally. And almost a county endorsement of the master planning would maybe cover a lot of the issues that you're trying to cover municipally. So some ideas for you and some thoughts. And, I think endorsement is a great idea, but, I'm an old man. So I look back to the first plan and where we had communities of place. And I honestly don't see much reason not to use those listings of hamlet and village and center. And except back then we knew what they were. And the question today is, are those municipal entities still under that characterization, or that community characterization? That's what you want to check. Has Metuchen somehow expanded, or as we know, Princeton Borough and Princeton Township, they merged. That's a very different animal than it was way back in the first redevelopment plan. But I think that's something that, if you recognize what you recognized in the past, you can get maybe better participation from the municipalities.
Boy, a lot of good points there, Nick. And a couple of those things I can speak to. I know I started here just a little over 2 years ago, and the first thing on my plate, I was assigned to develop regional plan endorsement. It was referenced in the State Planning Act, but there wasn't guidance for it. So we now have guidance for regional plan endorsement, and we have a couple who are undertaking that. And I know that it's a huge priority of Donna Rendiros, the executive director here, and she's been meeting regularly with the county planners. And so she asked to have that be one of our first activities. And so we do have a county focus. Right now there's the Burlington County, the Route 130 corridor, 12 communities are coming in as a regional plan. And I believe Somerset County is thinking about coming through to have their countywide plan endorsed. And we've really seen a huge difference in the municipalities that have the support of their county. That's really been the counties. Some of the counties have been incredible supporters of plan endorsement and providing a lot of the resources to add to the capacity for the municipalities as they make that approach. And so it really, I think you're right on target that that's a great place to start. And there are a lot of aspects of plan endorsement that are achieved through the counties. I've been looking to the counties for the build out analysis that they already did related to their wastewater plan instead of starting from scratch, and the hazard mitigation planning. There's so many things that are happening at the county level that it really feels important to have them be at the table, if not leading. So that's a great consideration. And when you look at the 94 that I mentioned are the communities who are expiring, but you mentioned there are a number that have center designations, and whether it's centers or hamlets or villages, and whether it's still relevant, that's, some of those designations are the ones that are going to be expiring. Some of those communities went through the actual plan endorsement process, but some of them had their centers designated prior to the process being in place. But either way, they will be expiring. So, having a fresh look to see what's on the ground. For some, it's been quite a few years, and maybe it's different today. And the other thing that I was asked to do when I first started was to look at the municipal self-assessment guidance and try to reduce it from the perspective of making it easier for municipalities to go through the process. And so at the same time, we're trying to maybe streamline it a little bit. We're also adding the resiliency and equity aspects. So I'm afraid there was I don't know if there was a net gain for the municipalities in terms of how big a lift it is, but there's so much technical assistance that's available from the different agencies to help them get through. I really feel like, it's tough to maybe just say, trust us, but I do think that there is a willingness to support and to, look at where a community is starting from in terms of their capacity, and, the ones that need more help them along. And, and I will say that when you look at the number of municipalities that are going through the process, the other side of things is for the Office of Planning Advocacy and its state agency partners to add to the benefits for municipalities going through the process. And it's, when you look at the communities, that's very heavily the CAFRA zone communities who are seeing the benefits because of the synergy between CAFRA centers and the state planning centers. But to have that same level of benefit for municipalities who are elsewhere in the state is something that, we're continuing to work on. I know it's a big priority of Donna's to work with the other state agencies to add to the benefits. And already there are a number of, extra points for competitive grant programs that you get. And I think the technical assistance side of things, you can't really downplay that. There are a lot of aspects that by the municipalities coming to the table and working with all the state agencies, they'll find all sorts of things that they didn't know were out there that can be additional benefits. But
Megan, thank you so much for that really comprehensive response. I appreciate it. And as it stands right now, we haven't really paid too much attention to your office recently, and that's going to change as of today. We have a lot of the initiatives you just brought up. Regional, our all hazard mitigation plan just was approved. We're in Resilient New Jersey at the Raritan Bay. So we're doing a sub-watershed based plan for resiliency that we hope to move all around my county in sub-watersheds, and hopefully get some people to pick up the SUP issue, the stormwater utility programming issues. So there's a lot going on, and I'm sure I'll be contacting you and the agent you mentioned in your listing to see what we can do to coordinate our activities with what Office of Planning Advocacy. I think it's good to see the office reinvigorated, and it's important. But I do think you've got to get communications out there, and the idea about what benefits you have if the municipalities come to you is so important to get out again and again and again. You just have to keep making that point. so that they really understand, because otherwise it comes down to it's a mandate without a funding. That's what they're all going to say. And sometimes we say, yeah, but it's a good thing, we'll do it anyway. But most often they're looking at their pocketbooks. So thanks so much for your comments. This was a great session so far, guys, and I'm going to shut up to let other people talk.
Thank you, Nick.
On that segue, we do have about 10 minutes left. If anybody else has questions, for you to raise your hand or again, put them in the chat. I do have a question, Megan, and that is, how many, or do you know if any of the communities have started to integrate these climate hazard assessments into the planning process, or is it just the fact that we're still kind of in this extension period that nobody's done it?
Well, there are quite a few municipalities that have sort of, even before they were participating in the plan endorsement process, they're, you know, like I said earlier, if they're having sunny day flooding on a regular basis, they're thinking about these things. They haven't necessarily thought about checking all the boxes and putting the data in the format that we're looking for. And I think we've had a number of technical assistance programs partnering with FEMA and OEM and DEP and Rutgers and, you know, a lot of different organizations to provide resources to the communities. And a lot of them were doing that before this. You know, they had already done other, you know, technical assistance programs or just things with their staff or consultants. So I guess, there's a wide range of how much communities are thinking about this, how much they're doing it from a planning perspective versus maybe, you know, just looking at hazard mitigation. You know, there's as many municipalities as there are, that's the, you know, how many different levels they're at. And it often comes to capacity and whether there's, I mean, in the nonprofit sector, in my past life, it seemed like it was really important to either be a champion or make sure that a community had a champion for a particular concept. And I think I see that as a key element here. If a community has someone, and it can be their mayor, it can be their BA, it can be their green team chair, you know, there's whoever, if there's somebody in the community who's really, or multiple people in a community who are really passionate about this and helping them move forward, then they're in a better place. And sometimes I think focusing on the people as much as the products is important, because we all know you can have a lovely plan sitting on the shelf, but if you don't have someone championing it and you know, moving it forward, then you're not getting where you need to be. And I'm not sure if I answered your question exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that, you know, we after Sandy, especially, a lot of communities took part in the getting to resilience process and some other vulnerability assessment tools that were developed at that time. And I guess my follow-on question would be then, in your mind, that can translate quite easily into this ML/UL requirement. And that's probably a really great news for these communities that have been a little more proactive.
Yeah, I feel like the packaging of it into the place that it needs to be for the ML/UL is sometimes just collecting, you know, these things that they have. I noticed that, you know, City of Hoboken's weighed in, and I know they've done a lot up there, and you know, just having some of the communities, they've already got all the pieces. We just worked with, you know, Upper Township and their endorsement, and they had so many of the items already done, but they still need to, you know, put it into a product that, and it doesn't, I hate to make it sound like just a document as opposed to a living process. I think once you've sat down and had all the right people think about it and put it into a document, then you've got all your departments knowing what their role is, and you know, having kind of an action plan for moving forward, not just you know, a little bit of this happening over here and a little bit of that over there. So I think the process itself is intended to be one that has everybody kind of pulling together in the same direction, and all different elements and strata of the municipality focused on the same thing.
Yasmin, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Yasmin, and
Hi.
I'm the environmental planner and project manager of the city of Hoboken. I just want to chime in quickly with what you're saying. I apologize, I joined a little bit late, but Hoboken's done quite a bit with regard to resiliency, sustainability, and, you know, as you know, we have several challenges. We're 70% in the floodplain. We have about 60,000 residents, and we're only 1 square mile long. So we really are a target. So we started really taking this seriously in 2017 with Mayor Zimmer. Now we're with the Ball administration, but we recently had, I posted some links in the chat here. We've had workshops specifically for our residents where we invited the North Hudson Sewerage Authority, as well as architects and engineers from Boswell Engineering to come and speak to our residents. That was through our Resilient Buildings workshop in October. The reason for that is because I know that this is specifically for coastal, but Hoboken actually has 2 types of flooding that occurs. Not only coastal, but also fluvial events. So from heavy rainfall. And what happens in Hoboken is, especially in the south, southern west, I'm sorry, I should say the western areas of the city. So that includes the northwest and the southwest. Water will pool because we actually have a combined sewer stormwater system, and unfortunately the outfalls, which go into the Hudson River, it pools due to an overwhelm of water into our systems, into the back, and really just sits there. So unless we can figure out a way to, you know, drain it, discharge it, figure out a way to, you know, adapt to that heavy extent of stormwater, it really does cause a lot of issues for us. So we did have the Rebuild by Design project, which was the resist, store, delay, and discharge. It was highly successful. We're actually in our last construction phase for resist, which are the levees that are being put up for coastal events. But the the store and delay are actually resiliency parks, which holds water under our parks. So in these giant tanks, our Northwest Resiliency Park actually holds up to 1 million gallons of water, stormwater under our park. And so what happens is when it rains, and the water has nowhere to go because the sewers and stormwater systems are still combined, and they're not under our jurisdiction, unfortunately, they're NJCRC. What we do is we contain the water. We try and alleviate the system by pulling it into these tanks instead, holding it, and then waiting until there's low tide and the storm has receded, and then discharging it back through our outfalls into the river. So that is our solution to date. And, you know, we are also very involved with Resilient New Jersey. We are constantly looking for new solutions. So I just wanted to share that quickly.
Nice work. That's great to hear so many forward thinking and you know, just really on target activities happening up there.
Yeah, we actually had Caleb Stratton speak at the last coffee chat, and gave us a little bit of insight in how that process worked and played out over time, and how communities really need to, in his view, start small and be proactive, and things will snowball. So there's just that start is important. And I think this, you know, planning process is that start, and, you know, making sure these communities do have this hazard assessment done probably will open their eyes to some of the vulnerabilities they didn't think they had, in my view. So we have, I saw a note from Vanessa that I think the breakouts are going to close a couple minutes later, so we may have time for one more question, comment, anything. Okay. Well, if we don't have any, you're free to go mingle with your colleagues in the main room if you would like to leave the breakout, and we'll see everybody there.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you
Thanks,
very
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.